Um, just kind of a brief thing for my previous video. I did have rankings for the original that I forgot to say when I shot it, and I didn't feel like reshooting 20-minute rant. Um, so if I had to rank them for the classic cast, I would say Wrath of Khan first, then Undiscovered Country, a very close second, then a solid Voyage Home. Uh, then I would probably say Search for Spock, and then the motion picture, and then a dead last, Final Frontier. Alright, Next Generation! Yay! This is a shirt from OMSI, by the way, from many years ago when they had a Star Trek exhibit. Anyways, alright. So, one of the Star Trek Generations, the first film with the Next Generation crew. One of the glaring mistakes, in my opinion, is Scotty being there. On the Next Generation episode Relics, when they revive Scotty, he once asks how Kirk is doing. Like, you should know. Like, you saw him get dissolved into the Nexus. You should know he's not alright. But yeah, I know I'm gonna have very nerdy complaints. They do have Tim Russ on the crew of the Enterprise B as a human, as opposed to his more famous role as the Vulcan Tuvok on Voyager. The bad guy is Malcolm McDowell, who, funnily enough, is the uncle of Alexander Siddig, who plays Dr. Bashir on DS9. So, nice little Star Trek family there. Also, fun fact, if any of you are Babylon 5 fans, maybe some of you, Patricia Tallman, who plays the telepath Lita on that show, her original training is as a stunt person, and she's actually Dr. Crusher's stunt person, and you can clearly see it's Patricia Tallman's face as she gets shoved into the water. So keep an eye out for her. I liked the Duras sisters. I know they were villains, but I mean, the last time we saw them on the show, one of them was pregnant. Like, did she have the kid yet? No. And like, is that kid okay? We don't know. It's not even referenced to. Like, yeah, I know it's little things. Also, one of the kids evacuating the Enterprise is holding a tribble. And of course, the tribbles were supposed to have been hunted down by the Klingons and totally extinct by this time. The soundtrack is beautiful, though. It's an amazing soundtrack. Next, we have First Contact, which I watched with the director's commentary. It was the cinematic directorial debut of Jonathan Frakes, who is, of course, Commander Riker. There was a watch-along thing like they did with Jurassic Park a couple weeks ago that they did for First Contact, and he was there, and it was great to see him on that if you want to find that on YouTube. He is just delightful as a commentary person. He remembers everybody's names and will give them shout outs, and even if it's somebody who had 2 lines, he'll be like, "Oh, that was Larry such and such," and it's really cool. This is now 20 years later and he remembers all their names. Plus he's just so jovial. He is Riker. It's very cool. Apparently the visual effects designer, a guy named John Knoll, created Photoshop. Mind blown. That was one of the things that Jonathan Frakes pointed out as the credits were rolling. It was like, oh yeah, that guy created Photoshop. What? This was the first movie in which Geordi appeared without his visor. Instead, he has contact lenses, which look kind of, I don't know, robotic. Um, and I love how the movie is like, maybe we shouldn't, like, we know we shouldn't talk to historical figures and mess up the timeline, but they're so cool. Let's talk to them. It's just a delightful film, and recommend highly. Alice Krige as the Borg Queen, so good. Like, looking at the makeup and her acting, it's great. Up next we have Insurrection, which again has Jonathan Frakes at the directorial helm, as it were. This time the commentary featured him as well as Marina Sirtis, aka Deanna Troi from the show, and it was just lovely to hear them having a nice chat as the film went on. Apparently he calls her Mina, which is like adorable, and he calls Michael Dorn, Worf, he calls him Turtlehead because of the Turtlehead. The bad guy is F. Murray Abrams, who you will know from Grand Budapest Hotel and Amadeus. This movie definitely feels like it could have been an episode rather than a film. There's one point where, unrelated, there's one point where people are regenerating and Geordi gets the use of his real eyes. The weird part is Geordi was born blind. It wasn't a childhood accident that could be healed with cellular regression. This movie also has Riker shaving his beard, which kind of sucks. I'm just saying. Season 1, Next Gen sucked, and Riker had no beard. This means, therefore, keep your beard. And at one point they used the word parricide, which I had to look up, and just to save you the effort. It means the killing of a parent or other near relative. Just saying, like, shout out to them. Good vocab. Alright, and finally, for the Next Generation crew, we have Nemesis. I watched with the commentary, if only to have some explanation for everything. The director's name is Stuart Baird, and he clearly had no idea what he was doing. This was his third and final directorial credit. It's kind of weird, in the film, it's kind of weird that Worf knows who Irving Berlin is. Like, any of you younger kids possibly watching, do you guys know who Irving Berlin is? I'm guessing probably not. Also, this is like 300 some odd years in the future. Like, who's gonna know Irving Berlin from like 2 seconds of notes? I know. Again, it's the most random nitpicky things that irk me. Also, he like grew up on Khitomer and Russia. Like, I don't see him being an Irving Berlin. Like, he clearly wasn't an Irving Berlin fan. They revealed that much, but it's like, how does he even know it? Anyways, there is a cameo with Kate Mulgrew, who is now Admiral Janeway. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and guess that Harry Kim is still an ensign, though. This has Picard's clone being played by Tom Hardy. Now, just an aside, I feel like he's doing a little bit of a Picard impression when he played Bane. Let me know what you think. And he has a really similar backstory here than he does to Bane. Thing is, he's just such a string bean here, though. It's kind of like it's Diet Bean or Bane, excuse me. Another reason this movie irks me, it should have Spock, like, or at least mention him. He was the ambassador to Russia, to Romulus, and he was assisting in the Romulan reunification movement. See in the Next Generation episode, Reunification, Part 1 and Part 2. They're fantastic. And that's not even mentioned here. Ron Perlman is in this as like a pointless hench person of Tom Hardy, and he's just in a lot of makeup. He's barely recognizable, and he's just wasted. Like, it's Ron Perlman. Give him something to do. You're too good for this, Ron. Like Star Trek V, this is boring and badly written. Especially with the commentary. It just kind of filled me with a rage. Like, the director kept explaining shit that I knew when I was like 8 years old. Like, dude, assume anybody buying this movie is for the reason of completing a Star Trek collection, not buying it to complete their Stuart Baird filmography of 3 movies. One of the things he was pointing out was like, when they're, say, like, on screen, that's just a green screen. That's blank. There's nothing really on there till we put it in post. I'm like, LeVar Burton explained that on Reading Rainbow during season 1 of Next Generation. Like, dude, you're not informing anybody. And his voice just sounded very condescending. Can't tell. I didn't like the director. Anyways, so on IMDb it said, quote, Shinzon's the name of Tom Hardy's character, by the way. Alright, so Shinzon is an actual Chinese name, chosen by screenwriter John Logan as it continues the trend of Chinese names for Romulan characters, as well as the new Riemann characters. Logan admitted he had absolutely no idea what it actually means, end quote. So I looked up as many Romulan names as I could find, none of which sounded Chinese to me. So I don't know what he was talking about. There's several classic Romulans who aren't even named. There's Sela. There's Tomalak. Like, Tomalak doesn't sound Chinese to me. Like, what are you talking about? And the fact that you'd be like, oh, let's name him that. I don't know what it means. Yeah. Alright, so, ranking of Next Generation movies would go First Contact, far and away the best. Next I would say Generations, followed by Insurrection. Honestly, those two are somewhat interchangeable. They're both solid films, but First Contact's just so much better. Anyways, and then a distant fourth would be Nemesis, which is the worst film of the entire franchise. Alright, and that is it for the Next Generation movies, and we will see you in the next video. Live long and prosper.